Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Magella and Carly, two romantically obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Welcome to Fated. I'm Carly.
And I'm Magella, and today we're going to be diving deep into The Queen of Shadows, the next book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And even though we have both finished it now, the complete series, we are taking you through each of the books, and we're very excited because I think that the second half of this series amps up so spectacularly that it's hard to describe what it's like unless you've read the series. It's such a unique reading experience, I think. And so today we're going to talk about Queen of Shadows, and we're very excited. But first, I want to know what Carly is currently reading, because now that she's finished the series, she's on to something else.
I am. I'm on to a new series that we've started in our book club this March. Our first book was The Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. And so I read that last week very quickly and fell in love with this new world. And then this morning, if anyone's watching the video, I do look like a hot mess because I literally woke up at 7:30. I had 2 hours left of book 2, Glow of the Everflame. And I just said to my husband, "You're taking the kids? Right, great. See ya. I'm staying in bed." And I've just finished book 2. And I just want to leave this podcast recording and start book 3. They're so good. And I'm not going to share much because we're going to record some episodes on them. But loving these from Penn Cole. And I have been courting her on Instagram because I have a dream of getting her on for an interview. And they're all free on Kindle Unlimited at the moment. So you can devour that series if you've got a Kindle for, well, the cost of your membership, I guess, as well. So I've got them. I've got a couple of ARCs, advanced reader copies, that I've got to read in the next couple of weeks as well. So I might dive into one of them too. It's been a fun week of reading. I've really, really loved this. And I think I've loved this because I've jumped out of Throne of Glass, and this is a bit simpler. Not a lot simpler, but it's a bit of a easier brain read, still complex and still has a really sweeping story and very compelling and engaging, but a little bit lighter. What about you? How's your reading week been? What are you up to?
I'm going to add that I have read the entire series, the 3 books that Carly has, and we have had different reading experiences. So I'm going to go back and reread, because the first time I read it, I was so enraged and like I literally threw my book across the room at least 4 times in uproar about what some of the choices that some of the characters were making. And so I was waiting for, I was like, are you starting to get frustrated? Are you angry yet? And she's like, just finished the second book, loved it, no anger. And I was just like, okay, so maybe I was not in the right headspace to read it. So I'm going to go back and do a reread, because I do feel like my reading experience was like, I remember it being tinged with this, kind of like haze of red. Like, I felt very like, why does she keep doing that? Like, what is wrong with her? Even though I kept reading, I couldn't stop. But I feel like, and Carly has not had that experience at all, which I find quite interesting, because it's not often that we have very different reading experiences of the same book. There hasn't been many books that I can think of where I've gone, that was amazing, and you said that was terrible, or that I found that really easy to read and you found it really hard. Like, I don't think we've had
only one,
reading experiences. Which was this one?
The Never King. No, The Never King. Remember that one?
Yes. But that's, yes, that's yeah. But
that DM, who's the our female main character, our protagonist, she did a lot of stupid antagonistic things, but I could see why. I could totally understand why. So I think I was reading that going, I think this is what Magella was getting really frustrated with, but I could see the motivation behind it. Anyway, I'm going to put up, I've got a really funny clip of you explaining that in the last episode. I'm going to put that up, a little mini clip of you going, I flung my Kindle across the room.
I was so mad. I've never felt so mad in a book and still wanting to read. Like, I think sometimes if it becomes too frustrating, I just am like, this is when it becomes very ridiculous. I think that I have tapped out before, but this one I just really like I really like the characters and I like the book. Maybe it's because I feel like it was a little bit on the nose. Like, I felt like it was the easier choice to move the plot forward. I'm not sure. I'm going to do a skim reread
Yeah.
and
Deep
report
dive.
back and to see if it was the same, because I feel much calmer now, much
I
happier. Like,
really
just
think the COVID rage was definitely influential because I didn't have that level of rage at all. Are you reading anything right now, or are you kind of between books?
well, I have just finished two books by Hannah Parker, which I didn't realize was an unfinished series, because as I keep saying, I don't want to start unfinished series because it mentally messes with me. Like, I feel so frustrated that I cannot get resolution and closure in this world or with these characters. So for my well-being, I was like, no, I shall not be partaking in things that are not finished. Um, so of course I don't check,
Of
and
course.
I just see something on TikTok and I'm like, so actually it was on the author's TikTok, Hannah Parker, and she has a publishing company as well. So she also publishes other people's books, and she was just talking about the sort of wearing those two hats. And I was like, oh, well, she put all the tropes that were in it. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. I went and looked at it. She had some good reviews. So I just downloaded it. It's called The Autumn's Tithe, the Severed Realms trilogy. And the second one is called Autumn's Traitor, which is book two. And it's a mix of fairy, fae, and human. So there's two, they're in the same world, but they're literally divided by a chasm with one bridge. And once a year, someone comes and takes one human girl back to the Fey realm, and it's meant to be this huge honor, and they do this special quest and all these kind of things. But obviously, it's not as it seems. Um, and it was actually so good and so easy to get into. And the best thing about it that actually really slightly struggled with, which I feel like I'm almost ashamed to admit, but the female main character was not beautiful and small, and she was curvy, and they kind of described her as of average attractiveness. Like, they said it in different ways multiple times, but just like she has this like wild, messy hair and freckles, which both of those sound cute to me. But, she had she talked a lot about how she struggled with her body. Like, the character talked about, this is the body that was never going to look like a fae, or this is the body that, made me be looked over, like, or no one ever gave me a second glance, and no one ever said I was going to be beautiful or whatever. So the character herself had all these, I guess, body image issues, which kind of, came through in her thoughts. It was more that I felt frustrated by her talking herself down. Like, obviously, I think in all the books we've read, when we think about our female main characters, we've talked about why are they always so young, and why are they always so ragey. But this was like, they are also typically described as beautiful, like an undeniable beauty. Why is it less attractive that she's curvy and that she has freckles and that she has curly hair? Like, in my mind, I was imagining like this kind of wild blonde, because it was blonde curls, and these freckles and these intelligent eyes, and then this kind of curvy size 14 body, that was like feminine and, maybe not great at long jump. Like, I just feel like, I couldn't imagine her being like fast on her feet and leaping
Mounting a
through the
dragon
air.
fast. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Did you feel like it almost took away from the story? Like, I can understand the intention of an author writing a book like that, because we're like, well, we want that. We want to represent, we want to see ourselves potentially in our main characters. I can see why an author would do that. But did you feel like it kind of detracted from her strength, her inner strength, her personality, her intellect, the storyline? Did it kind of jag you and keep you coming back to that?
I can see like she was going on her own character redemption arc of like self love. There was a self love arc written through this book and these books. And I think maybe that it felt a bit obvious and heavy handed. Maybe that's what I found. Like I didn't necessarily have a problem that she was described in a certain way, but more that it was a really predictable journey that she was going on, that I felt like her character was more nuanced and more intelligent than that. I'm not sure. Like, isn't that like, who am I to judge what kind of journey she goes on, and who am I to say what someone can feel about their own body and their looks and that kind of stuff? I just think it was hard in that I think we're so used to our main characters being so strong in many ways, even though they're struggling and they're broken in some way. Usually they're often just so determined and so I don't know what it was. I mean, I still read both books in like 3 minutes, and I was just like, what do you mean she hasn't even started writing the third one yet? I was like, what? This is outrageous. Like, I can't even be like, oh, it's coming out in 6 months. I'm just like, it's coming out at some point in the future, but she's got to publish all these other books for other authors because she has a publishing house.
Why do you do this to yourself, Magella?
I don't know,
You know, I hear you when you say, who am I to judge? But it's also your reader experience. And if that was your reader experience, was that it was a bit too forced or too obvious or talked about too much, then that's okay. You know, we can still enjoy our books and be like, oh, that little bit just niggled me. I can understand why the author did that. And I think it's great for representation, but it kind of pulled me out of the story, or it didn't allow me to really, you know, get in the flow of the story or connect with that character or whatever. You're allowed to have all of those opinions. It's not judgy. It's how you experience the character.
I think it's just because I feel like when you talk about appearance, it feels like you need to be very sensitive about that topic. You can't just be like, I didn't like that she was described like this. It wasn't that she looked that way. It was the yeah, I guess it's like when you look at your friend who has self-esteem issues and you are like baffled when they're, oh my God, why would anyone like me? Or I'm so ugly, or I'm blah, blah, blah. And you're just, are you delusional? There's such a big disconnect because you don't see the person in these individual aspects. You see that
Yes.
the whole of them and their energy and their heart and their soul and their personality, it all blends so that, you know, like you can't even separate them now and think, oh, she's just a body and that's just her mind. Like it's just like a package. And so I think that that's what was kind of triggered, is this like frustration that this character was so down on herself when it was, she has obviously been written in a way that you can see all these great characteristics and qualities. So it was a little bit like you just wanted to shake her. So perhaps it's like, I just don't like being frustrated in books. Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe that's
No frustration.
smooth sailing for Magella, please. All right, so we'll add the Seven Realms trilogy to my long, 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 long TBR. And you will frustratingly wait till 2025 for book 3. 4, 3. 4.
Yeah, or longer. Who knows? There's not even a release date, you know.
Okay, we're going to let that go. All right. Let's talk about Queen
Maybe
of
I'll
Shadows.
petition the author. I'll just keep doing a TikTok every second day, and I'll be like, Hannah, we've got an army of people here. Me and others will join, needing this book. You know, like,
Forget about your income, your other income source, publishing other people's books.
That's
Forget
right.
about that.
Those other authors can publish themselves. Come on, like, what are they doing? You need to write quickly.
Write quickly. Okay.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure at all. Just and do it well. All right.
That's right.
Queen of Shadows. 1, 2, 3, 4. Book 5. Book 5. Now that I've read all 8, I am like you now, and I'm like, which one? What number? What happened? So I did have to go back and do a little bit of a what happened in this one. Do you want me to start us off with a little short synopsis, and then we'll dive into our favourite bits?
Yep.
Spoiler alert, of course, if you are at this stage of the episode and you haven't read Queen of Shadows from the Throne of Glass series, please turn it off now and come back. Once you have enjoyed this, gosh, this is when the books started to get really big. 600-page book, this one, and they just get bigger after this. So this book, let me get my little notes up. So this really gets right into it. We kick this book off in Dorian's mind. So Dorian has now been captured, controlled by the Valg, and so he's being possessed. It's all very, really upsetting for Dorian. He can't remember much. Has come back to Rifthold. Kale has joined the rebellion. I'm going to do this as quick as I can. In this book, Lysandra and Aelin become really good friends. And really, for me, I remember going, oh, yeah, Aelin's back just to fuck shit up, basically. Like wrath. Kill all the people that have wronged her. So Lysandra and Aelin, throughout this story, they work together to kill Arabin, and they succeed with that. We've got Manon. Her witch friends, have been selected to breed with the Valg demons, which isn't going very well. Manon's old witch of a grandmother is building some kind of weapon for the kings. We learn about that. Manon and Aelin meet in this book, which is a pretty epic fight scene. And there's a bit of a twist in that where Aelin actually ends up saving Manon. We get the Rowan and Aelin kiss. Finally, we get some more action. I mean, it's not much, but we'll take it. And then at the end of the book, we've got the epic battle at the Glass Castle, and the king is killed, finally. And we learn a lot about what happened to him and how he was possessed by a demon the entire time. So that's like look at that, in a brief paragraph, that's what happens. And now let's dive in.
I do feel like this is a book where lots of really exciting small events happened throughout the whole thing. So it led up to the big fight at the end in the Glass Castle, between Aelin and Dorian and the king, and Kale trying to save his friend. But it, literally opens with Arabin popping back up, trying to manipulate, Aelin to do things. She's there because she needs to rescue her cousin Adian, which is in itself such the rescue operation was incredible. It was where she had to infiltrate the castle, and they did it on like a coronation night or something. There was a night where it was there was a big event, and so she conspired with a troupe of ballerinas, and they all held these glass flowers that caused or smoke, gunpowder or smoke. But anyway, and so Adian's wanting to kill himself because he doesn't want to be turned into a Val, because they've now realized that his ring was fake and that he was not being controlled at all the whole time. So he's in the dungeons, he's sick, he's trying to let himself die because he's like, I would rather die than, be pitted against Aelin. That would actually break his soul. Of course, Aelin's like, we will rescue him because that's what I do, and he's my cousin, and we will go get him. And it's this incredibly intricately orchestrated rescue operation, which she had to conspire with her enemy, Arabin, because he knows so many people and he has such influence and he has very deep pockets, and she knows that he wants to own her in some way again. So she plays into that to be like, I'm going to make him feel like that he's winning this and he will get me, and I'm unaware, and I'm still just this young assassin who can be manipulated with her emotions and her loyalties, which is what he did to her last time. And so I loved that rescue scene, like the disguises and the fact that she had all these people in on it, and the fact that she painted word marks. Well, she realized that there was word marks in the entrances, and she had them on her body to protect her, and just getting her cousin back, and him realizing that it was Aelin who'd come to save him. And that was the first time they'd seen each other since they were kids, I
Amazing.
definitely think I cried in that point. And then that just happened, and then Rowan shows up because
Oh,
he's like, "Oh, I'm here because Lorcan's tracking you, and I needed to be near you." But really, it's because they're mates and they can't be apart, and he's starting to realize it. And Aelin's literally sobbing when she sees him and
oh,
running. And there was this really beautiful line that when she ran to him, there was like a wind at her feet, and Rowan controls the wind. So it's almost like he was flying her to him with his magic.
I died. I died and went to heaven when Rowan just he came, even though she told him to stay. He couldn't stay away. Yeah, I did. It took me a bit to recover after Rowan showed up. And again, I'm like laughing at myself because like there was nothing really spicy or like anything really, you know. It just was that mated energy, and yeah, you're my queen, and I'll obey you until you tell me to stay away, and then I won't. And so Lorcan, we kind of got more introduced. I don't know if we've met him previously, have we? No. Was this the first book we met
Yes,
Lorcan?
once she asked Rowan to ask the Cadra to come and help them when they were fighting.
That's right.
And so the
Wow.
the four of them came, and Lorcan was like, "Just leave her; she's gonna die." And
That's
then Rowan was like, "No." So that's the only they saw them for like 2 days or whatever, and then Lorcan
But
left.
yeah, and he's a real
Lorcan
threat in this
left.
one, isn't he? And we learn about his power, like he's as strong as Rowan and is
Yes,
very much a threat. But yeah, gosh, when Rowan came, I was like, yes, Rowan's here. And even just like simple little scenes, like when he was looking through her wardrobe, and all her beautiful gowns. So he'd never seen her wear anything like that before, and he hadn't seen her in Rifthold when she had all those riches and beautiful material possessions. And when and I think in this one he asks her to wear a gold metallic dress at some point, and then that happens. And
a nightie,
yeah,
like a little, yeah,
negligee.
lingerie nightie thing. And yeah, that's
Woo-hoo.
right. She's like, I don't want because what happens is they kind of have this like she's like, "You're gonna stay in my bed, like this is back at like we'll be sleeping together." And she puts him in Sam's clothes, and he's kind of like can't fit into them because Rowan's this 500-year-old warrior, and Sam was only a 17-year-old, sort of just on the cusp of stepping into his manhood. And he's just was so like respectful about it. He was kind of like, "I didn't want to put this on because I didn't want to break it, and I know that this is Sam's." And then they had this little dance that they would play, like they were sleeping together in the same bed, but he's trying not to touch her because he
Yeah.
doesn't want to like burden her. And she's like, why is he not doing anything? So then she's like, well, I'm just going to mess with him. And so instead of sleeping in normal pajamas, she wears tiny little silk slips, and he's basically
Yes.
like, what are you doing to me? Like, oh my, and she's like, this is just what I sleep at night. And then falls asleep and starts snoring. And he's literally there being like, I need to go
He's
have a
so
cold
horny.
shower. Like, so that this like simmering tension that they're both kind of aware that is there, but also are both resisting it or are scared to open it, or
Yeah.
like because she feels such comfort with him. Like, they obviously kind of slept in the same room when they were training, when he was kind of taking care of her. And so it's become this thing where it's like they are together, but they haven't actually been together yet. So I do think this particular mating was the slowest slow burn out of all of
You think?
SJM's
You think?
kind of series. Like, it's just we're in book 5, and they haven't even kissed yet, have they? Like
No, they do in this book.
that.
Yeah,
Yes, but
no.
not yet
So
in this.
Air of
Yeah,
Fire, book 4, all very platonic. Obviously, you could see it developing, and as if people that were that like two characters that are that close, it wasn't going to turn into something. We all knew that, and I think that's beautiful and very clever of how SJM writes. Like, it's not overt and it's not too obvious, but you get the vibe, you feel the vibe through the book. Yeah, the slowest of slow burns. But I just laughed a lot because I was like, I'm picturing this, 500-year-old or whatever he is, 200-year-old male warrior, like waking up with a boner in the morning next to this gorgeous, just not being able to restrain himself at all. Like his physical body just, I'm like, really, after 500 years of being alive, you still can't restrain it around a gorgeous woman?
I know,
No.
but I kind of love that because I
Well,
love that you can't like that desire is so strong. Like, that's such a big appeal, because when these characters feel attracted to someone, when obviously there's a deeper connection, they just sort of lose their mind. It is like written for the female. Like sometimes I say to my
Yes.
partner, like, why aren't you just overcome with lust to the point where you just can't function? And he's like, I've been with you for 12 years. Like, um, I love you. I love you so much, and I'm just like, I need you to literally be unable to function because you have such a raging primal desire to bed me, because that's what it's written like. And is that just because the Fae have such a strong
Yeah.
desire, or is it just because we're obviously reading about the start of a lot of these romances where it is very intense and there's a lot of like chemistry at the beginning?
Mm.
Would be great to read about like a coupling that's been together for a
Yeah.
hundred years, and they still like, get out of my way, I've got to get to her room, like I've been away from her for 8 hours, like,
No,
just you
they're
could
fighting
feel
in
the
front of each
tension
other.
building.
He's snoring. She wants to put a pillow over his face. They're annoyed. No.
Don't kill the dream.
It was really cool to see Rowan, yeah, in her space and environment in Rifthold as well, and throughout the story, learning more about who she was as Selena and where she went and where she hung out, and her showing that side of herself to him. And again, Queen of Shadows, as I said, it's for me, it was her wrath, like her coming back and stepping into her power even more, and pulling down some of the people that really hurt her and her friends. But her commitment to Dorian throughout is quite exceptional as well. She's like, he will not face his father alone. He will not go through this alone. We will save him. We will rescue him. And even when Kale distrusted her, right? So we've still got Kale that's really distrustful of her power and magic, and he's in the rebellion, but he's not trusting her, and she's a schemer for a good cause. She's got very good heart, but she had to really play off a lot of the characters to pull off Aedian's rescue, and then bringing down Arabin and bringing down the king. Also, while she's also got this Manon and all these witches that are out to get her as well. Like it was a very eventful book.
Yes, because Dorian got kidnapped, didn't he? So that's how it, like, or he didn't get kidnapped. Lysandra got kidnapped
Yep.
and was taken because when Arabin died, which was like, such an incredible thing, that whole coup,
Yes.
which Aelin had orchestrated, where she actually like, knew what he wanted, realized that he thought that she could be possessed by the black Valgrims, and then she was one step ahead and pretended that she had been possessed, and then like he bought into it and then came back, and she obviously wasn't possessed, and so she killed him. Well, she didn't actually, she gave his death to Lysandra because
Lysandra.
Arabin
Love
had
that.
killed her love and also one of her best friends, which was Sam, which was Aelin slash Selena's ex and stuff. But the fact that she had orchestrated his death and then handed it over, like her revenge wasn't, she understood that someone else's revenge was
Yeah.
deeper than hers potentially, but also that she had set up all these dominoes that when he had died, not only would she get revenge and also remove this awful man from society, but that she would get his fortune. That,
Yes.
like, the thing that he had done all these awful things, and she'd been part of it, obviously, when she was an assassin, but that she, like, needed funds for the war to defeat the Valg. And so getting it from another villain, like a villain to fund the war against the villains, was just so poetic.
So
And it
great.
was so great, like the will reading where she sat there and, had to pretend to be Selena again. So, like, was embodied that energy of like, I don't care, fuck off, like, I own you, you're all beneath me kind of thing. And then, like, all these people who thought they would get parts of his fortune were basically like, nothing is left to you. Everything is left to Selena, including the house, including blah, blah, blah. And she had orchestrated this all by going to the bank at night and learning the layout and changing the will and,
Yeah.
and so, which was amazing and so cool. But then Arabin had a couple of things up his sleeve, but when he died, it was released, the information about Lysandra being a shifter, which is a very rare and unique thing. And obviously, a magical person, which are sort of, banned in Riffhold. So then she was abducted and taken away, and she has a child. And so the child ran to Aelin to get help. And so obviously then they had to stage this rescue mission to get Lysandra. And that also is where the Dorian, who's possessed, and Aelin's like, we're going to have to kill him, at some point. And Kale's like, we can't, like, or at least if we're going to, let me do it, but swear that you won't touch him. And, it's like, I can understand why so many people seem to be anti Kale. Like, he is, he is a little bit simple in his, it's very like, Dorian's my best friend, so I will like do
Oh,
everything for Dorian. And
yeah.
also magic is bad, so all the people with magic bad. And also I have no self-esteem, so I kind of hate myself, which makes me make poor decisions. Like, I can understand, but I do feel like I never felt like that about Kale. Like, I was always like, I see where you're coming from. You have had a terrible childhood. You seem like you are this beautifully soft-hearted man that has just been sort of molded into what society needed you to be, or what you thought a real man was. And he has this like very deep sense of loyalty, which I feel like out of anyone, Aelin should understand that the most, because she is the most loyal person. Um, so I feel like he's kind of like a mirror to her in many ways, just without the magic and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that, when this whole all collided, it's like you're kind of like, Kale's gonna fuck this up. We've got to get Lysandra. Please don't let her die, because I'm really enjoying this new friendship, and she seems like a cool chick. And then the witches, and you're just like, I am fairly sure that these witches, Manon, they're going to be good witches, like, because we've had her perspective, and we can see
Yeah.
that she's conflicted and not loving her clan direction, and how the matrons lead and everything. But it's also like witch blood, it seems to be very loyal also. And then they get Lysandra, but then the witches come back and
Mm,
ambush them. And because the witches are there to look at the witch towers, because she's like, my matron is definitely lying to me and keeping me out, and I'm the heir and I'm the next in
yes.
charge, and why am I not knowing what's happening? And so there's this whole thing of like, there's a rescue, there's also kind of like an uncovering of,
Mm,
a weapon that's going to kind of potentially like just decimate the other side. There's also sort of this unfurling of dissent within the 13, the clan, this one clan against all of the other witches. And then there's this kind of flicker of hope that Dorian is still in there, like there's this like, oh my god, like he's maybe, like there's this, he came out for that witch, like he had a moment of feeling himself again, like the because the demons cannot be around the golden eyed witches. They're
mm,
like which has definitely got to have some kind of overlapping thing happening with other worlds that you will read about later, Carly, in the next series of SJM,
okay.
Crescent City. There's a whole thing where you start to question all the lineage of everyone. You're like, how did that, oh my God,
Okay.
did really, wow. With no resolution, mind you, because we've only had the three Crescent City books. So I feel like that's why the theories on TikTok are currently bananas, because everyone is sitting in this state of like anticipation and no resolution. So people are just like, fuck it, I'm just going to make up entire, which is obviously how fanfic also evolved too, because people weren't getting what they wanted from the books. They're like, I didn't get enough of
Yeah.
this. Like, people are like, why doesn't Manon have her own series? I want to know what she did afterwards. And why didn't Lysandra, feature more? And why can't we learn about the details about a lead, and like what
Yeah.
actually happened with an open door? Come on, you know. Um,
I mean, this
so
is the challenge when you have so many characters and storylines and arcs in a series, isn't it? That once it ends, people are like, but what happened? And I was the same with Manon. I was like, oh, there's a whole other series just for her. But look, that's why we've also got fanfic and things like that too, to sort of scratch that itch. Um, there is so much going on, isn't there? Every time I pull out one of these books, I'm like, a lot happens. No wonder I feel really exhausted after I finish. I'm like, okay, on to the next. But I really, this is where the witches got me. I don't know if you remember when we talked in Air of Fire. I was like, meh, witches, smitches, whatever. But this is the book that's like, okay, I get it. I get why people have t-shirts with the 13 on it, and I get it now. And I really, really, I loved Astron as well as Manon, but Astron obviously amazing. I loved that we also had the story with Aelin, how Manon meets Aelin, and we see this, somewhat, well, not somewhat, very damaged, physically damaged, injured, psychologically scarred human, or mortal, we think, at when we meet her, trapped in the towers with all the witches and the horrors. And then we see her being told, well, actually you've got witch blood, and her helping the witches to find out what's going on with the demon babies that are being born like that. Oh God, I'm like, how dark is your mind, Sarah J. Maas? Like
But
to
it
come up with.
makes sense though, in a way.
Yes,
Like
yes,
how do you expand armies? Like you either like create the beings from nothing,
of
or
course.
you breed them, or you create weapons that aren't alive, kind of thing. So I think that, I mean, that whole that particular thing where they're like being bred, like they're literally just like being forced to
Mm,
breed, and not in any kind of way that's like they're going to die to breed, like
yeah,
they will die, like they will be bred
to
however many
death.
times, and then they will, yeah, they kind of thing. And it is, even though these are like rival clans it's happening to right now, it's still witches, it's still, so there's a
Yeah,
sense of like, this, how could our head witches be allowing this to happen? Like we're
yeah.
literally torturing our own
There's still
people. And
a lot of
yes, there's a big picture always within a war, like how much, but how much do you sacrifice to win? Like when is the sacrifice too big for victory? And I
yeah.
think that this is definitely when Manon, like that, and what Astrid told her about what the matron did to her years ago with her
Oh,
like witchling. This is when Manon has that serious shift where she's like, I don't, I can't be, I don't think I can be who they need me to be. Like, I can't be the wing leader and the heir. I mean, it doesn't happen until the end of the, like, Manon has a lot of like
mm,
internal struggle. Like, I
mm.
need to be the leader. We were told that no love, no, all hate, discipline. What's their code? It's like discipline, um that they have those three words. It's like they're, and so it's basically like they're being bred to be weapons, and
Just
there's no
ruthless.
compassion, and
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
love and stuff. And Astron's like, actually, I have been in love, I have felt love, and it is
Oh,
better than all of the feelings in the world, like. And Manon's a bit like, what? Like, this is like, all these little things start challenging her worldview.
yes,
um
yes.
and that
And
scene where like they're escaping after the thing, and that's where Aelin and Manon have their fight, and they both have this realization like that they do love, like Rowan
mm,
gets injured, and a very bad injury, and Aelin is basically like, I will dive in front of him to protect, like I will die for him and
yeah,
stuff, and he will die for her. So that's where she starts to go like, are we mates? Like, is this, like, it has that, the thread has
yes,
been started to be unraveled, and Astrid screams out from Manon in the same way, and it's like, oh my God, is their love, does Manon love? And then she saves her. And Aelin's like, I couldn't
yeah,
let such a good fighter die. So it's just still like, it's this bravado. Even in the midst of all this stuff happening, Aelin's like, still got the swagger, like.
yeah. I really enjoyed seeing Manon grapple with what she was learning and feeling and starting to notice in herself and starting to witness around her. I was like, sometimes though, I was like, stop being so mean to the 13, Astron's just trying to tell you what's really going on, and she's right, so listen. And I think it's Sorrel or Sorrel, when she
Yeah.
tells
I say
Manon to just
Sorrel, but I think it is
Sorrel,
Sorrel.
Sorrel. Like she's like, just chill, Manon. Astron's right, and so yeah, we start to see that kind of the shift in the 13 from just this fighting machine to them being able to share their stories and trying to educate Manon, but she's still obviously, yeah, just this grapple between, no, that's not who we are, but hang on, I'm having these feelings, as you explained. That was really cool. I liked that part of the story.
And also, I love a rescue. It was like really on
Mm,
edge. I was like, oh my God, are they going to get everyone? Will someone die? Because this is like, they're literally intercepting the king
yep.
and witches. Surely they can't do this without someone dying. And so you have this feeling of which character can I let go of? Like, well, it can't be this one. I can't be this one. But I guess if we lost this one, it would be okay. But it would still be bad because it feels like, how can you go in and not lose someone? Even though we know that generally not a lot of people die in SJM's world, which is something that people complain about, where they're like, it's just, there's nothing invested if everyone survives. And I'm just like,
Oh, but
no, I'm sorry. Like I'm reading
I felt
happy
like
ending.
I still felt at every point, even right up to the last 60 chapters of book 8, that someone was going to, like, she still kept you very much be like, at any moment, someone could die. And it will be someone that I love. And I felt like that right up until literally the end when I wanted to vomit, when I thought someone really huge was going to die. And I also, in this one, felt like Aelin was going to be double crossed by so many of them at so many different times too. I thought Lysandra at one point was going to double cross her. I remember holding my breath through that whole scene with Arabin because I thought that he had double crossed her and actually trapped her for a moment. I don't know if I'm a gullible reader, but I get really, I'm like, yep, you got me again. You got me again. So again, Queen of Shadows, that just, yeah, on the edge of my seat. Who's going to die? Who's going to live? Who's now mated? Lorcan's now in there. He's incredibly powerful. He's going to kill. Like, it was action packed. But I do want to talk really quickly about a scene that broke me, which was when Aelin goes to visit Sam's grave.
Oh,
When, like,
yes.
she says to Rowan, I have to do something. I have to go somewhere. And he was like, anywhere you want to go. Like, I will take you. Where do you need to go? And she goes and
Yes.
visits his little grave, simple, clean. On the stone was written Sam Cortland, beloved.
Beloved.
Arabin had left it blank, unmarked. But Wesley had explained in his letter. I mean, Wesley, the unsung hero. Hello, Wesley, who we all hated.
Yes, exactly. Not enough people talk about Wesley.
He explained in his letter how he'd asked the tombstone carver to come. Oh, beloved, not just by her, but by many. Sam, her Sam. With Rowan at her back, right? Like, oh, so beautiful. Hello, Sam, she breathed into the river breeze. Content to be near him, the sun warmed her hair, a kiss of heat along her scalp, a trace of Marla. I miss you every day, I miss you, and I wonder what you would have made of all of this, made of me. I think you would have been a wonderful king. I think they would have liked you more than me, actually. Like, I was bawling. Page 327.
Do you think
And
they
then
could have been mates as well, like two mates? Because Sarah J. Maas has talked about how it's possible in her world that you can have more than one mate.
I don't know. Was
Do
it
you feel like
was the attraction and the love ferocious enough? Like, that ferocity with which
you
they.
can't?
I don't know.
Yes, like they couldn't stay away. I mean, maybe he couldn't stay away from her, but it felt like she was very like, she woke up and thought about should she go, and then she didn't because she didn't want to kind of, you know, overstep and try and
Yeah,
control his mission or whatever he had said. Whereas I feel like if it was a true mating, maybe like
yeah,
you would have gone out of your mind,
yeah. And I just like
which
this
is,
part where she stands up from the grave and turns around and she starts to say to Rowan, and Rowan just says, I know who he was to you. And then he chooses a pebble. And then with a gentleness that cracked her heart, he set it on the headstone beside her own pebbles because she loves them. I know who he was to you. Like that. Oh, he's so beautiful. And then they're back to killing. He says, "You're going to kill Arabin tonight, are you?" And she says, "Yes, after the dinner."
Yes.
Yes,
We've had this
just after
really,
dinner.
like, moment where it's just, I mean, but that I guess would also like hone that killing desire because you've just like
Yeah,
tapped back into the grief
absolutely.
and the
So
senseless grief, as in like that was unnecessary.
I really sobbed a lot there. And is this the book where? No, it's not. Don't worry. Forget that.
Yeah.
Scratch that bit. Don't worry.
That's right. And then, so all of this happens, lots of other things. There's,
Lots.
like I feel like every chapter there's like, they're building. It does feel like the story goes in these kind of like waves of this happened, Aedian's rescue, and then it's Dorian's rescue, and then it's the Morath kind of thing,
New threats.
and then it's
Lorcan's here.
the final. Yeah, exactly. And then they have to take down the king, so they release magic again. So there's this whole thing where it's like they've got to explode the tower because that's how the king has prevented magic. And then there's the final fight, which is like so
Amazing.
intense.
So epic. What
Yes,
an epic battle scene. So cool. And it was, I remember
and
reading it.
emotional.
I was reading it on holidays. And so I had time. I remember that. Like, I am not putting this down. This is the penultimate.
That's
I
right.
remember the
No
anxiety
one
through my
come near
body.
me.
I was bad beside the pool. The kids were happy. I was like, nothing's happening until I know what happens at the end of this book, which didn't really resolve much anyway, because then I was like straight on to the next book. But gosh, she writes a good battle scene. She really does.
She did a good cliffhanger. The king died, and that Aelin and Dorian killed him together, but it was, Dorian actually landed the killing blow, and he could fight the demon because she put a ring on his finger, which was the ring that they got from Lorcan, which it was still very like there's all these little things that happened within the fight that were strategic and had been planted beforehand. Like it's not
Yeah.
just this like fight where they're just like, oh yeah, we're fighting and there's this and it's like, okay, so she's given Kale the Eye of Alina so that he potentially has some protection. She doesn't know if that's going to work, but Kale's sacrificing himself, which also was a change of plans because he wasn't
Mm,
going to, but then I'm going to fight the king to give her more time to get to Dorian, and then Dorian's like, I can't fight this demon. She's like, I've got a ring. Don't worry about it that I have planned for, and I'm going to get it by distracting you so that when you stab me, I'll get it onto your fingers.
yeah.
Rowan's like, holy shit, like he's separated because he's trying to,
He's trying
take
to
the
kill more.
towers down with Lorcan
Yeah.
and Aedian,
Yeah.
and they're all being like overrun. And then like Lysandra comes back because she had been like sent away because it's like, like she needs to go back to her daughter 'cause she's the only mother. So she's like, and then halfway there, she's like, I can't leave these people like this. What am I fighting for? If I don't fight, then there will be no world for my child. So she comes back as the ghost leopard, and like kills like all the Val while these warriors are almost dead. Like Rowan's been stabbed because he was double crossed by Lorcan, who didn't realize and, hadn't killed the things and brought them back. And then Aedian's doing all his like, it's been an honor to fight next to you, brother. So they're all saying their weird goodbyes, and Rowan's like, I can't believe I'm not with my Fireheart. Why did we
Yes.
ever agree to fight separately? So they've made this pact after this that they will never fight separately again. It's always together, because together they're much stronger. And so Aelin's like, I'm dying. I've been stabbed in the ribs through this amazing suit that prevents anything getting in, but Dorian's gotten in, and and then the king is dead, but now she's fighting Dorian, so she's fighting this enemy that she doesn't want to fight because she really wants to. And she's like, I know you're in there. And then the whole glass tower is shattered, and then Rowan's wind stops them from like being like splattered underneath because he took the towers down when they were underneath, so everyone had magic, and then Dorian and Aelin put their magic together, and that's how they killed the king. And it was combined, it was huge, and it was Rowan's never seen magic that was that big. And they turned the glass from the castle into this like wave that reached over into the city and was symbolic, of this kind of like a new wave of ruling is about to happen. It was a lot.
It
It was a
was
lot.
exhausting and amazing. And as you were talking, and I'm flicking through the end of this book, I remember now I was audibly like, gasping and saying, "Holy shit," and "What the fuck," and "No," and I remember my husband being like, "Wow, like you don't understand. You don't understand. It's an absolute ride." And I love, when you said, how Rowan was, I'm not with my fire heart, and he was scared she was going to die, and he was going to die because he was under the towers with Lorcan and blah, blah, blah. I just love how then it's like, oh, and that's all done. And they wake up the next day, and she says to him, "I saved the world, and yet I wake up to you being pissy." And he says, "It was a group effort, and I'm pissy for 20 different reasons, most of them having to do with you making some of the most reckless decisions I've ever." Like, then they just go back to like this married couple banter, annoyed at each other.
I think that in this book, it's starting to become very apparent that Aelin wants to do everything by herself, but will have to start
Yes.
letting people in, because I think that that kind of moment of like acknowledging Sam again was this whole thing of like, but the last time I tried to do something together, someone I love died. So I need to make sure that all of my plans are kept secret, because if I tell people, people will die. Even though it's this kind of warped sense of protection, she's kind of like, the less I tell people, the
Yeah.
less it can hurt them.
Yeah.
But when people love each other, they need to help each other. So there's this thing of, but you hurt us by keeping us separate. And yes, it's awesome that there are these surprises, but if you tell us, we can do it together. And also,
Yeah.
we're meant to do this together. A good leader does it together.
Well, she's
Her
been
whole,
alone.
like, the redemption arc of this is very
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of her finding her, I guess, her way of being in the world, and starting to, instead of being Selena the assassin, now she becomes Aelin the leader, but it's like she's still not able to be with the team quite yet. So there's this
Well,
whole thing of like, I'm actually strong, and this is, I'm actually going to change things, and there's all these people that are popping up around me that also want the same things and will be part of the change, but I can't quite let them help me or do it together with them. I'm still going to try and keep everyone safe by keeping them slightly away
yeah.
from,
It's not to retain all the power and control. It really is to protect the people she's in love with that hasn't admitted yet or is starting to care for. And you understand why when you've read all the other books. Because
yes.
really, the last time she had a plan with someone, he died a very brutal death. That was Sam. So, with someone that she cared about and
Yeah.
loved. So, there's a lot of trauma there. And she's been trained as an assassin. Like, you don't create bonds. You don't you are. You are a stealth machine that doesn't need anyone and doesn't need to rely on anyone and just pretty much flies solo. So you can understand that. But yes, you start to see, wow, okay, we need to do it together. And she she keeps calling Rowan the overbearing territorial fey beast, like jokingly. But he's doing that to show her, you can trust me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. You are my fire heart. We are mated. We have, what is it, Karanam or whatever it is, the
Karen,
magic.
yeah.
But he's also, I can like, he's pissy and annoyed. Like, you should have told me. Stop doing things behind my back. That nearly got me killed. I need to know this stuff. But he's also really, I feel, quite patient with understanding how she needs to progress through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
16, the beautiful kiss on page 614.
Finally, which, even though it's nothing, it still feels like
I know it's really
enough. Like,
nothing.
I'm just like, oh, great. Yeah, this is good. It's happening. It's going forward.
Her
Like,
toes
I also
fell,
feel like,
her back arched. Things happened. Yeah. He touched her
yeah,
breast.
but I feel like, and wasn't she wearing like the gold slip? Like, I feel like surely
Yeah.
that came out, and he
I think
was
so.
just like, oh my God. But it is interesting, because I feel like out of all of the heroines, Aelin is like the least sexually explicit in terms of like, there is so much slow burn and smoldering, and she definitely is like lots of desire. But I just think, out of all of the characters that have been written, she has the least amount of sex scenes, the least amount of explicit, other than
Yeah.
a lead and her partner further on, which is just like a running joke now, like a meme, like, like where it's just like, why did we get a closed door scene on that? Like, what? Um, but I just think when you compare it to like Akatar, and then also, you won't know this yet, but like Crescent City, both of those heroines have quite smutty, saucy sex scenes quite often.
Yes.
Um, like there's a lot of sex in both of those series with the female main character, whereas in this one, I feel like so much of it was less about the actual smuttiness, and maybe because it was her first series that she
Yeah.
wrote, and
And
she
it's
started
still
when she
it's
was
still young
younger.
adult. We've got to remember that it's still young adult. Like I see this on the young
But
adult
so's
shelf at
Akatar,
the library. Akatar should not be on the young adult shelf at the library. I'm sorry, but no.
especially A Court of Silver Flames, like that. It should definitely be in the R section.
I don't want my boys to
um,
be reading that at 16. Oh, maybe I do. Maybe their future partners
yeah,
will.
it's
Thank you.
16. Yes, you definitely do for sure, and they will know some great
I don't
things.
want to
But I do
know.
think it's really interesting that, and also that there are other sex scenes in this series that are more explicit, with Manon especially has some sex scenes, but I guess it's like in terms of like smuttiness in a percentage, it feels like it's like a 5% smut book, and then
Yeah.
like 95% of it is the emotional journey. It's huge fight scenes. It's a lot of intrigue. It's like
Mhm.
connected plot points across realms and across timelines and across, vast character arcs kind of thing, which
Yeah.
um
But there's still an epic love
it
story.
doesn't yeah, it doesn't distract at all, but I do feel like upon reflection, when I often think back to it, I'm just like, man, like there just wasn't a lot of sex scenes in that, and yet I never felt like it was missing that. But I do
Mhm.
feel like I would have loved to have a few more in there, but it didn't feel like it was missing. I wish that there'd been a few characters that had the um they had gotten the space to explore that through the book, because we became really attached to a lot of the side characters, I thought.
Are there any secret chapters? You know, sometimes there's secret chapters that get written.
Ah, I don't feel like there's any bonus chapters for any of the Throne of Glass. Like
Okay.
that just wasn't a thing. I mean, I have read some fanfic, not a lot, but I definitely have some. And you and I both want to do Manacled, which I feel like I need to mentally prepare beforehand and be like, and have some therapy sessions booked in, because it just seems like that fanfic has wrecked people.
I have had
And
it
I
up
was,
as a tab for months, and every time I open my computer, I see it. I'm like, no, I've got to do these other ones first, and I've got to do it with Magella at some point when we can support each other through. And I
if
do
it
need
will
to
be
make
the
sure
same
Magella
though.
has a support team around her. Wally is on board. He has therapy on
Yeah,
speed dial,
he
all the things,
understands.
snacks,
That's right.
blankets, all the things.
But yeah,
Yeah,
not
wow,
not
lots
ready.
happens. Lots happens in this book. We say that about. I feel like I've said that about nearly every book in this series. A lot happens. It's
Yes. I think that when you break it down like this, it is really apparent how much happens, say, compared to like just even the books that we've read recently, where it
yeah,
feels like it's one POV, it's one world. Maybe there's a few villains, but it feels like it's not one dimensional, but it just feels like you're kind of going through this world and you're like, okay, things are happening, but I'm sort of on this one path. Whereas this feels like you're in a maze almost, and you're turning a corner and you pop into a new character, when you turn another corner and there's a different, death defying, fight that needs to happen. And it is like mentally, I think there is so
hmm
much happening, and you have to keep track of so many people, and where they're at in their character journeys too. Like, are they in love? Are they having a fight? Are they going through their own
yeah.
struggles? Are they grieving? So there's so
Mm.
many
And you
things that are
want to,
happening, which is why obviously people become so attached to the side
yeah.
characters, because the side characters become almost as important as the lead story.
Yes, in some books that I read, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go over and be involved in that person's POV right now. I want to stay here. But in Throne of Glass, I'm like, oh yes, I am equally as intrigued. as to what Dorian's going through, Lysandra's going through, Rowan's story. This is why she's amazing at what she's done, Sarah. This is why she's a magician of this genre, really. So highly recommended. Obviously, if you've listened to this episode, you've read the book, but for those who haven't, because I might do a little mini clip, you get so much complexity and depth, and you fall even more in love with the characters, even if you don't particularly like them. There's this, I don't know, there's this, you want to know, you just want to know more, and you want to understand more, and there's so many layers to each character. The complexity blows my mind, and yet it flows. It's still the pace is great. It's not too dry. There's some magic. She weaves some absolute magic through these books. So that's Queen of Shadows. Any other bits and bobs, favorite quotes, scenes, anything else you want to? No, we'll wrap it up. We could talk for another hour, but we shan't.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many beautiful lines in that, but I do feel like when I was kind of looking back through like favorite lines, so much of it was about power and inner strength and individual lines. If you pick them out, like someone has picked out these group of lines throughout the book, and if you read them just as these individual lines, they all talk about kind of finding your own inner strength, but then also being strong enough to let other people carry you. When you see a bunch of lines together from like throughout the whole book, obviously said by different characters or said not as a character, but like in the kind of sort of filler text, they all seem to be about finding yourself, finding your strength, becoming free, seeking freedom, like learning to listen to yourself, learning to like rely on others, learning to lean on others, learning to let others in. Like there was like this fear, strength, love, trust, loyalty, which obviously those words carry across all the books. But I think in particular, this one feels a lot like it was when, like it starts to become less the Aelin show or the Selena show and more like the cast. She was the person driving everything forward, and she still is. But now it's like this person is becoming such an integral part of the wheel. This person is now becoming like we're seeing all the where like if you take one away, the wheel doesn't work anymore. So I thought that was a really beautiful kind of realization after reading it.
And that obviously builds over the next books as well. My takeaway from this was, yes, Aelin, you're powerful and you can bring down the king of Aelin. You can bring down the palace by yourself and your own scheming and planning. Yes, you can. But isn't it much more rewarding and comforting and just that much better when you're doing it with your people, with people who love you and that you love and people who are loyal? That was the message I got. Yeah, she could do it alone, but isn't the journey better with all of these incredible people around her?
Yeah. It's a great takeaway.
Thanks.
I wonder how many people made it to the end, because this is a long episode. I feel like, did everyone make it, over the hour mark, and they're still here going like, yes, I've read this. It was amazing. Or have
Just
they
because we
gone
could
like,
listen for 5 hours and talk for 5 hours about it, who knows? We'll see what the drop off rate is, but it definitely needed it. I think it needed it. It was a great book with lots going on.
Kingdom of Ash is going to need like a 3-hour epic, or a multi-part discussion.
Well, some other podcasts do chapter by chapter, like an hour for nearly every chapter. So, I think we're doing okay.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. We're doing one book an episode. Impressive. Well done, us.
On 3 times speed, just sped us up a bit so we sound like chipmunks. Awesome. Well, we would love to hear from you if you've read it. What were your takeaways? What did you love? We always like to froth over this stuff. If you're in our book club, you can even just, send a non-spoilery kind of post or message to us. Just because we're not reading this with you right now, we have read it. We have it in here and we'd love to talk about it. Message us on Instagram or TikTok. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Sounds great.
All right.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp or encouraged you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it, and drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.